Chapter 1. The setup. Jeff Reynolds had never hated the sound of his phone more than he did at 4:57 p.m. on a Friday. The cheerful ringtone sliced through the hum of keyboards and muted chatter in the office, and he didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. "Answer it," Shiela Warner said from the desk across from his, her voice teasing as she leaned back in her chair. Her dark hair caught the glow of the setting sun through the window, and Jeff wondered, not for the first time, how someone like her ended up being his best friend. Gorgeous, smart, funny. And yet, here she was, laughing at his misery. "It's my mom," Jeff muttered, staring at the phone like it was a ticking bomb. "She's calling to remind me about Christmas dinner, and to remind me that I'm single. Again." Shiela grinned. "Maybe she just wants to hear your voice." "Yeah, right?" He swiped to answer, bracing himself. "Hey, Mom." The conversation went exactly as predicted. Warm greetings, a rundown of who was bringing what dish, and then, like clockwork, the ambush. "So, Jeff," his mother said sweetly, "are you bringing anyone special this year? You know your cousins are all settling down." Jeff closed his eyes. "Mom, we've talked about this. I just worry about you, honey. You work too much. You need someone." "I'm fine," he said quickly, glancing at Shiela, who was openly smirking now. "Really?" By the time he hung up, his shoulders felt like lead. He dropped the phone on his desk and groaned. "I swear, if I hear the words settle down one more time." Shiela tilted her head, eyes sparkling with mischief. "You could always bring someone." "Like who?" He gestured vaguely. "I don't exactly have a girlfriend lying around." Her smile widened. "You do have a best friend." The words hit him like a snowball to the face. He blinked. "Wait, are you saying?" "I'm saying," she interrupted, leaning forward. "If you're that desperate to shut them up, I could pretend to be your girlfriend. Just for dinner." Jeff stared at her, his brain short-circuiting. Shiela. His Shiela. The idea was insane. Brilliant. Terrifying. "You'd do that." She shrugged. Casual. But her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Sure. Why not? But..." Her lips curved into a sly smile. "There's a catch." Jeff narrowed his eyes. "Of course there is. You do the same for me," she said. "My family's been on my case too. You play the doting boyfriend at my Christmas dinner." Jeff hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. The cost was high, his sanity, his pride, maybe his friendship, but the alternative was another year of pitying looks and lectures about biological clocks. "Deal," he said finally, the word tasting like trouble. Sheila's grin lit up the room. "Deal." Neither of them noticed the way the office lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over two people who had just agreed to turn their lives upside down. Chapter 2. The deal. The elevator hummed softly as it descended, carrying Jeff and Shiela toward the lobby. The office had emptied out, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and the ghost of fluorescent lights. Jeff shoved his hands into his coat pockets, replaying the conversation like a bad movie trailer. "Pretend to be my girlfriend." He'd actually said it, out loud, to Shiela. She walked beside him, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her expression unreadable. Jeff risked a glance at her, half expecting her to laugh and call the whole thing off. Instead, she looked calm, almost smug. "So," she said, breaking the silence as the elevator doors slid open. "When do we start planning?" Jeff blinked. "Planning?" She stepped out into the lobby, tossing her hair over her shoulder like she was in a Christmas commercial. "You didn't think we'd just show up and wing it, did you? If we're going to sell this, we need details." He followed her, his brain scrambling to catch up. "Details like?" "Like how we met," she said, ticking points off on her fingers. "How long we've been together. What your favorite thing about me is." Jeff nearly tripped over the welcome mat. "Favorite thing?" She shot him a look, amused. "You're my boyfriend now, at least for 2 dinners. You're going to have to gush a little." Jeff groaned. "This is already sounding complicated." "Complicated is what makes it believable," she said, pushing through the glass doors into the crisp December air. The city was dressed for Christmas. Twinkling lights strung across lampposts, wreaths on shop windows, the distant sound of carolers. Shiela pulled her scarf tighter, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Besides, you agreed to my terms, right?" Jeff muttered, falling into step beside her. "Your family dinner." She grinned. "Don't look so thrilled. I'm just wondering what I've gotten myself into." "Something fun," she said lightly, but inside, her heart was doing somersaults. This was her chance, the opening she'd been waiting for. If Jeff saw her as more than his buddy, maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would change everything. They reached the corner cafe, their usual Friday stop. Warm air and the scent of cinnamon wrapped around them as they stepped inside. Jeff ordered his usual black coffee. Shiela went for a peppermint mocha, extra whipped cream. They claimed their favorite booth by the window, where snowflakes drifted lazily against the glass. "Okay," Shiela said, pulling out a napkin and a pen like a general preparing for battle. "Ground rules." Jeff raised an eyebrow. "Ground rules. Rule 1, she said, scribbling furiously. "We act natural. No weird pauses. No awkward jokes about how fake this is." Jeff smirked. You mean no jokes like, hey mom, meet my totally real girlfriend? She shot him a look that could melt ice. Exactly. Fine, he said, leaning back. What's rule 2? Rule 2, she continued. We learn each other's family quirks. My dad will grill you about sports. My mom will ask if you're serious about her little girl. You need answers. Jeff groaned. Your family sounds terrifying. They're sweet, she said, smiling. Just enthusiastic. And rule 3. Her pen hovered for a beat before she wrote it down. Rule 3. No backing out. Jeff frowned. You think I'd bail? I think you'd panic, she said, meeting his eyes. And if you do, I'm stuck explaining why my fake boyfriend disappeared. He held her gaze, something tightening in his chest. I won't bail. For a moment, the air between them shifted, charged, like static before a storm. Jeff looked away first, pretending to study the snow outside. He didn't know why his throat felt dry or why the idea of holding her hand in front of his family suddenly seemed less ridiculous. Sheila broke the silence with a bright smile. Good. Then let's start with the easy stuff. What's your favorite thing about me? Jeff stared at her, words tangling in his head. Her laugh, her kindness, the way she made Mondays bearable. But he couldn't say any of that, not without sounding like a man in love. He said, grasping for neutral ground. Your coffee order. It's festive. She laughed, tossing the napkin at him. You're hopeless. He grinned, relieved to see her smile. And yet, you agreed to date me. Fake date, she corrected. But her heart whispered something else entirely. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and steady, as two friends plotted a lie that might just turn into the truth. Chapter 3. The first test, Saturday morning, found Jeff sitting at his kitchen table, staring at his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. Didn't. It held a text from Sheila. Coffee shop at noon. Bring your A game. We're making this look real. He wasn't sure what A game meant in this context. Charm? Wit? The ability to lie convincingly to two entire families? Whatever it was, he suspected he didn't have it. Still, he pulled on his best sweater, the one his sister claimed made him look less like an accountant and more like a human, and headed out. The cafe was bustling with weekend chatter, the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon rolls thick in the air. Sheila was already there, perched at a corner table like she owned the place. Her hair was loose today, tumbling over her shoulders, and Jeff had to remind himself to breathe before walking over. You're late, she said, smiling as he slid into the chair across from her. I'm 2 minutes early, he protested. Late for me, she countered, sipping her peppermint mocha. Okay, boyfriend, let's get to work. Jeff raised an eyebrow. Boyfriend, she grinned. Practice makes perfect. He groaned, but something about the word sent a strange warmth through his chest. Fine. What's first? Sheila pulled out a notebook, flipping to a page titled Operation Christmas Couple in bold letters. Jeff stared at it, half amused, half terrified. You made a list? He asked. Of course, she said, tapping the page. Step 1, our story. How did we meet? Jeff shrugged. Work. Too boring, she said immediately. We need something cute. Something that makes people go, ah. Like what? He asked, leaning back. She tilted her head, thinking. What about? You spilled coffee on me during my first week, and then bought me a new one to apologize? Jeff frowned. That actually happened. Her smile widened. Perfect. Real stories sell. He chuckled. Fine. Coffee spill. What's next? Step 2. How long have we been together? Jeff hesitated. 6 months. Make it 8, she said. Gives us more credibility. He scribbled it down, then paused. Wait, why am I writing this? Because you'll forget, she said sweetly. Step 3. Favorite things about each other. Jeff froze. We're back to that? Yep, she said, eyes dancing. Go. He stared at her, mind blank except for 1,000 things he couldn't say. Her laugh, her kindness, the way she made him feel like he wasn't just another guy in a gray cubicle. Instead, he muttered, You always know what to order at coffee shops. She laughed so hard heads turned. That's your answer? It's practical, he said defensively. Fine, she said, wiping her eyes. Mine's easy. You make me laugh when I want to throw my computer out the window. Jeff smiled, something soft settling in his chest. That's actually nice. Don't get used to it, she teased. But her cheeks were pink. They spent the next hour crafting their fake love story, complete with inside jokes and holiday traditions they didn't actually share. By the time they left, Jeff felt oddly lighter, like planning a fake relationship with Sheila was the most natural thing in the world. Until she stopped him outside the cafe, her breath visible in the cold air. One more thing, she said, her voice softer now. If we're going to sell this, we need to look comfortable together. Jeff frowned. Comfortable how? She reached out and slid her hand into his, fingers warm against his. Like this. For a second, Jeff forgot how to breathe. Her hand fit perfectly in his, like it had been waiting for his all along. He swallowed hard, forcing a grin. Right? Comfortable. Sheila smiled, But inside, her heart was racing. If only he knew how real this felt to her. Chapter 4. Jeff's family Christmas. Jeff had never been more aware of his heartbeat than he was standing on his parents' porch. Snow crunching under his boots, Sheila's gloved hand tucked into his arm. The house glowed like a Christmas card, warm lights in every window, a wreath on the door, and the faint sound of laughter spilling out. It smelled like cinnamon and nostalgia, and Jeff suddenly wished he'd brought backup oxygen. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad," Sheila whispered, her breath warm against his ear. Her smile was dazzling, even under the soft halo of falling snow. "Close enough," Jeff muttered. "My family doesn't do subtle." "Good," she said, squeezing his arm. "Neither do I." Before he could respond, the door flew open and his mother appeared, wrapped in a red apron dusted with flour. "Jeffrey Reynolds," she cried, pulling him into a hug that nearly cracked his ribs. Then her gaze shifted to Sheila, and her eyes lit up like the Rockefeller tree. "And who is this?" Jeff swallowed hard. "Showtime. Mom, this is Sheila, my girlfriend." The word felt strange on his tongue, but Sheila delivered her part flawlessly. She smiled, extended a hand, and said warmly, "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Reynolds." His mother ignored the hand and enveloped Sheila in a hug that could have qualified as a wrestling move. "Oh, honey, you're gorgeous. Come in. Come in." Jeff shot Sheila an apologetic look as they were swept inside. The living room was a riot of Christmas cheer, stockings on the mantel, a tree groaning under ornaments, and relatives scattered like confetti. His dad was in his recliner, laughing at something on TV. His sister, Megan, was perched on the couch, phone in hand, eyes widening as she spotted them. Well, Megan said, grinning like a cat with cream. "Jeff brought a date. Alert the media." Jeff groaned. "Hi, Megan." Sheila leaned in, her voice low and teasing. "You didn't tell me you had paparazzi." He smirked despite himself. "Consider this your red carpet debut." Introductions flew like snowballs. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all eager to meet the girlfriend. Sheila handled it like a pro, laughing at jokes, complimenting the tree, even pretending to love Jeff's childhood photo album when his mom proudly shoved it into her hands. "Oh my gosh," Sheila said, holding up a picture of 8-year-old Jeff in a Batman costume 2 sizes too big. "Look at you. So fierce." Jeff groaned. "Mom, why do you still have that?" "Because it's adorable," his mom said, beaming. "Sheila, isn't he adorable?" Sheila glanced at Jeff, her eyes dancing. "The fiercest Batman I've ever seen." Jeff felt heat crawl up his neck. He was supposed to be embarrassed, but somehow, her teasing felt different, softer, like she wasn't laughing at him, but with him. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Platters of roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and enough pies to feed a small army. Jeff sat beside Sheila, their chairs close enough that her knee brushed his under the table. Every time it happened, his brain short-circuited. "So, Sheila," his dad said, carving turkey with surgical precision. "What do you do?" "I work with Jeff," she said smoothly. "Same office." His mom's eyes sparkled. "That's how you met. How romantic." Jeff opened his mouth to protest, but Sheila beat him to it. "Actually," she said, smiling, "he spilled coffee on me my first week. Bought me a new one to make up for it." The table erupted in laughter. Jeff stared at her, stunned. She remembered. She'd used their real story. "Smooth move, son," his uncle said, winking. "Coffee's the gateway drug to love." Jeff buried his face in his hands. "Please stop." But Sheila was laughing, and the sound wrapped around him like a warm blanket. For the first time all night, he didn't feel like he was faking anything. After dessert, when the family migrated to the living room for gifts, Jeff slipped outside for air. Snowflakes drifted lazily under the porch light, and he exhaled, watching his breath fog. The door creaked, and Sheila stepped out, her cheeks pink from the heat inside. "Surviving." "Barely," he said, smiling. "You were amazing in there." She shrugged, her eyes soft. "I like your family." "They like you," he said quietly. "Maybe a little too much." She laughed, then fell silent, her gaze meeting his. For a moment, the world narrowed to snow and stars and the way her hand brushed his arm like it belonged there. Jeff swallowed hard, his heart thudding. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in his throat. So he just stood there, wondering when pretending started to feel so real. Chapter 5. The aftermath. The drive back from his parents' house was quiet at first, the kind of silence that hummed with unspoken thoughts. Christmas lights blurred past the car windows, glowing like tiny galaxies against the dark. Jeff gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than usual, replaying the evening in his head. His family had loved her. Of course they had. Sheila was charming, funny, and somehow managed to make his mom's interrogation about future plans sound like a casual chat. She'd laughed at his embarrassing childhood stories, complimented his sister's new haircut, and even helped his dad fix the Bluetooth speaker during dessert. She was perfect. Too perfect. Jeff cleared his throat, searching for something, anything, to break the silence. "So, thanks for tonight." Shiela turned to him, her profile soft in the glow of passing streetlights. You don't have to thank me. It was fun. Fun. He let out a short laugh. You call my uncle asking if we've picked out baby names yet? Fun? Her lips curved into a grin. I thought it was hilarious. You looked like you were about to choke on your mashed potatoes. Jeff groaned. I was. She laughed, and the sound filled the car like music. For a moment, Jeff let himself just listen, wondering why it felt so good to hear her happy. Then her laughter faded, and the quiet returned. Heavier this time. Jeff wanted to say something real, but the words tangled in his throat. Instead, he blurted, You were amazing in there. Shiela glanced at him, surprised. Really? Yeah, he said, his voice softer now. My family, they loved you. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by something gentler. That's good. That was the point, right? Right, he said quickly, gripping the wheel like it could anchor him. But inside, nothing felt anchored. Everything felt off, or maybe too on. They pulled up outside her apartment building, the snow crunching under the tires. Jeff killed the engine, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them was thick with something unspoken, something that had been building since the moment she slipped her hand into his outside that cafe. Shiela unbuckled her seatbelt, her voice light but careful. So, next week. My family. Jeff nodded. Next week. She hesitated, then smiled. A small, brave smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Good night, Jeff. Night, he said, watching her climb out, her boots crunching softly against the snow. She didn't look back, and Jeff sat there, staring at the empty passenger seat like it held answers he couldn't find. When he finally drove away, his chest felt tight, his thoughts a mess. Pretending had been easy. Too easy. And now, he couldn't stop wondering if the hardest part was going to be pretending it didn't mean something. Chapter 6. Sheila's Family Christmas. Jeff stood on the sidewalk outside Sheila's apartment, staring up at the string of twinkling lights framing her windows. His breath fogged in the crisp December air, and his stomach churned like he'd swallowed a snow globe. He'd survived his family's Christmas circus. Barely, but now it was her turn. And somehow, that felt even more terrifying. The door opened before he could knock. Shiela stepped out, bundled in a cream coat and a scarf that matched the blush on her cheeks. Her smile was bright, but her eyes held a flicker of nerves. You ready? She asked, locking the door behind her. Jeff exhaled. Define ready. She laughed, looping her arm through his. Too late for second thoughts, Reynolds. The drive to her parents' house was filled with easy chatter, holiday playlists, jokes about office Secret Santa disasters. But underneath, Jeff felt the same tension humming between them. Every time her hand brushed his on the gearshift, his pulse jumped like a startled rabbit. Sheila's family lived in a sprawling two-story home that looked like it had been plucked from a Christmas movie. Lights draped across the roof, a giant inflatable snowman waving from the yard, and the faint scent of gingerbread wafting through the open door as they stepped inside. Shiela, a woman with the same warm smile and chestnut hair, swooped in, hugging her daughter tight before turning to Jeff with curious eyes. And you must be Jeff. Jeff managed a polite smile. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Warner. Oh, call me Carol, she said, pulling him into a hug that smelled like vanilla and cinnamon. Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to meet you. Jeff shot Shiela a look as they were ushered into the living room, which was a riot of holiday cheer. Stockings, garlands, and a tree so tall it nearly brushed the ceiling. Her dad was by the fireplace, laughing with a man Jeff assumed was her uncle. The younger cousin darted past, wearing reindeer antlers and wielding a Nerf gun. Jeff, this is my dad, Tom, Shiela said, guiding him forward. Dad, this is Jeff. Tom shook his hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. So you're the guy who finally convinced our Shiela to settle down. Jeff's brain short-circuited. Dad? Shiela said, her voice sharp but playful. Behave. Tom chuckled, clapping Jeff on the shoulder. Just kidding, son. Come on, grab a drink. The introductions came fast. Siblings, cousins, a grandmother who pinched Jeff's cheek like he was 12. Through it all, Shiela stayed close, her hand brushing his arm, her laughter soft in his ear. And Jeff couldn't stop noticing things. The way her eyes lit up when she talked about childhood Christmases. The way her smile softened when she looked at him, like he was more than just a prop in her holiday play. Dinner was a feast: roast beef, glazed ham, enough side dishes to feed a small army. Jeff sat beside Shiela, their chairs close enough that her knee pressed against his under the table. Every time it happened, his pulse spiked. So Jeff, her mom said, passing the rolls. What's your favorite thing about our Shiela? Jeff froze, fork halfway to his mouth. His mind scrambled for something safe, something neutral, but all he could think about was the truth, that she was the best part of his day, every day. She makes work fun, he said finally, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. Even Mondays. Sheila's cheeks flushed, and her mom beamed. That's sweet. The conversation shifted, but Jeff felt the weight of Sheila's gaze linger. When he risked a glance, she was smiling, soft, almost shy, and it did something to him. Something he wasn't ready to name. After dinner came games, charades, trivia, laughter echoing through the house. Jeff found himself laughing too, caught up in the warmth of it all. But when Sheila's cousin teased, "So, when's the wedding?" Jeff nearly choked on his cider. Shiela rolled her eyes. "Ignore him." Jeff managed a weak smile, but inside, the question hit harder than it should have. Later, when the night wound down and they stepped outside into the quiet snow, Jeff felt like he was walking through a dream. Shiela turned to him, her breath visible in the cold, her eyes bright under the porch light. "Thanks for tonight," she said softly. "You were perfect." Jeff swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "You make it easy." For a moment, they just stood there, snowflakes drifting between them, something electric humming in the silence. Jeff wanted to say more, to tell her what he was feeling, but the words stayed locked behind fear. So he just smiled, pretending everything was simple, while inside, nothing was simple anymore. Chapter 7, The Shift. Monday morning at the office felt different. Jeff couldn't put his finger on why. Maybe it was the faint scent of pine from the lobby decorations, or maybe it was the fact that every time he glanced across the aisle, Shiela was there, smiling at something on her screen, and his chest tightened like a knot he couldn't untangle. They'd done it. 2 family dinners, 2 flawless performances. No one suspected a thing. Mission accomplished. So why did it feel like the mission had changed? Jeff dropped into his chair, booting up his computer, but his mind wasn't on spreadsheets. It was on Sheila's laugh echoing in her parents' living room, the way her hand had lingered on his arm when they said goodbye. He'd spent the entire weekend replaying moments he had no business replaying. "Morning, Reynolds." Her voice snapped him out of his thoughts. She was leaning against his desk, coffee in hand, looking like she'd stepped out of a winter catalog. Soft gray sweater, hair tumbling over her shoulders, eyes bright. "Morning," he said, hoping his voice sounded normal. Didn't. It sounded like someone who'd forgotten how words worked. She raised an eyebrow. "You okay? You look tense." "I'm fine," he lied, forcing a grin. "Just Monday. She sipped her coffee, watching him with that quiet curiosity that always made him feel like she could see straight through him. "So, fake boyfriend. We nailed it." Jeff chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, your family was great. They liked you," she said, smiling. "Maybe a little too much." He laughed, but it came out awkward, and Shiela tilted her head. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm good," he said quickly, turning back to his screen like it held the secrets of the universe. But inside, he was anything but good. He was a mess, a guy who'd spent years keeping things simple, only to realize simplicity had left the building the moment Shiela slipped her hand into his. The day dragged on, every interaction laced with something new. When she leaned over his desk to point out a typo, her hair brushed his arm and his pulse spiked. When she laughed at a joke in the break room, he found himself watching her like she was the only person in the world. And then came the moment that nearly broke him. Late afternoon, the office quieted as people trickled out early for holiday errands. Jeff was packing up when Shiela appeared at his desk, her scarf looped around her neck, cheeks pink from the cold air seeping through the door. "Hey," she said softly. "Thanks again. For everything." Jeff swallowed hard, meeting her gaze. "Anytime." She hesitated, like she wanted to say more, then smiled. A small, almost shy smile that made his chest ache. "See you tomorrow?" "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "Tomorrow." She walked away, and Jeff sat there, staring at the empty space she left behind, wondering how pretending had turned into the most real thing in his life. Chapter 8. The snowstorm. The forecast had promised light flurries. It lied. By 5 o'clock, the city was buried under a thick quilt of snow, and the office windows looked out on a world gone white. Jeff stood by the glass, phone in hand, scrolling through traffic alerts that read like disaster headlines. Roads closed. Accidents everywhere. Public transit crawling at a snail's pace. "Looks like we're stuck," Shiela said behind him, her voice calm but tinged with amusement. She was perched on the edge of her desk, scarf looped loosely around her neck, watching the snow swirl like confetti outside. Jeff turned, his pulse doing that annoying spike it had perfected lately. "You're not driving in this." "Neither are you," she said, arching a brow. "Unless you want to star in a holiday version of Fast and Furious. Snowdrift." He chuckled, but the truth hit hard. They were stranded. Most of the office had cleared out hours ago, leaving behind a skeleton crew and the hum of the heating system. It was just him, Shiela, and a storm that didn't care about their plans. "Guess we waited out," he said, dropping his phone on the desk. Shiela smiled, a slow, mischievous smile that made his chest tighten. "Guess so." They raided the break room for snacks, pretzels, granola bars, and a sad-looking fruitcake someone had abandoned. Jeff brewed coffee while Shiela queued up a playlist on her phone. Soft Christmas tunes filling the empty office. The fluorescent lights felt harsh, so they turned them off, leaving only the glow of the tree in the lobby and the twinkle of snow outside. It was cozy. Too cozy. Jeff sat on the couch near the window, nursing his coffee, while Shiela curled up on the other end with a blanket she'd found in the supply closet. Her boots were off, her hair loose, and Jeff couldn't stop staring at the way the soft light kissed her face. "This is kind of nice," she said, sipping her drink. "Like our own little Christmas hideout." "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "Not bad." Silence settled, comfortable but charged. Outside, the storm raged, but inside, everything felt still. Jeff's thoughts were anything but. He wanted to say something real, but fear kept his mouth shut. Shiela broke the quiet with a laugh. "Remember when we started this? 2 dinners, no drama?" Jeff smiled faintly. "Feels like a lifetime ago." She tilted her head, studying him. "You've been different lately." His heart thudded. "Different how?" "Quieter," she said softly. "Like you're thinking too much." Jeff swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Maybe I am." She didn't press, just smiled. A small, knowing smile that made his chest ache. Then she shifted closer, draping half the blanket over his lap. "You look cold." He wasn't. He was burning. For a long moment, they sat like that, shoulder to shoulder, the world outside disappearing in a blur of snow. Jeff could feel her warmth, smell the faint trace of peppermint from her coffee, and it was torture, the sweetest kind. "Shiela," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned, eyes wide, lips parted like she was waiting for something, anything. But before he could speak, the lights flickered, and the heating system groaned like a dying animal. Jeff cursed under his breath, and the moment shattered like glass. Shiela laughed softly, shaking her head. "Guess the universe isn't ready for whatever that was." Jeff forced a smile, but inside, he knew the truth. He was ready. He just didn't know if he had the courage to say it. Chapter 9. The fallout. The snowstorm had passed by morning, leaving the city glittering under a pale winter sun. Jeff drove Shiela home in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward but wasn't easy either. Every word he'd almost said last night clung to him like frost, heavy and cold. He'd been so close, one breath away from telling her everything. And then lights flicker, heater groan, moment gone. Now, sitting in his car outside her building, Jeff gripped the steering wheel like it could hold him together. "Thanks for, not panicking last night." Shiela smiled faintly, her scarf snug around her neck. "It was kind of fun, like a snowed-in movie scene." "Yeah," he said, forcing a laugh. Minus the happy ending. Her eyes flicked to his, something unreadable in them, but she didn't press. "See you at work?" "Yeah," he said softly. "See you." She climbed out, boots crunching against the snow, and Jeff watched her go. Watched her disappear into the building like the moment they'd shared had never happened. Like it was just another night. Work on Tuesday was weird. Not bad. Not tense. Just weird. Jeff felt it the second he walked in. The shift in the air, the way Shiela smiled at him like she was trying too hard to make it normal. And maybe she was. Maybe they both were. He tried to act like nothing had changed, cracking jokes about the snowstorm, teasing her about the fruitcake they'd shared. She laughed, but it sounded thinner, like the edges had been sanded down. By lunch, Jeff was unraveling. Every glance at her felt like a question he couldn't answer. Did she feel it too? Did she know how close he'd come to saying something real? Or was she just relieved he hadn't? He was halfway through a sad-looking sandwich when Megan's text popped up on his phone. "So, you and Shiela, what's the deal?" Jeff stared at the screen, his stomach dropping. "What do you mean? Please, you brought her home. Mom's already planning grandkids." "Bill." Jeff typed, deleted, typed again. "It's complicated." Translation, "You like her." Jeff froze, the words hitting harder than they should. Because Megan was right. He did like her, more than like her, and pretending wasn't cutting it anymore. He shoved his phone away, his appetite gone. Across the room, Shiela was laughing at something on her screen, her hair catching the light, and Jeff felt the truth settle like snow. Quiet, inevitable. He was in love with her, and if he didn't do something soon, he was going to lose her. Not because she'd walk away, but because he'd keep hiding behind fear until the chance was gone. That night, Jeff lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his thoughts a tangled mess. He'd spent years avoiding risk, clinging to the safety of friendship. But safety wasn't enough anymore. Not when every smile from Shiela felt like a lifeline. Not when every laugh made him want more. He wanted her, and for the first time he admitted it, to himself in the dark where no one could hear. The question was, did she want him too? Chapter 10. The realization. Jeff wasn't sure when his apartment stopped feeling like home and started feeling like a waiting room. He sat on the edge of his couch, phone in hand, staring at Sheila's name in his contacts like it might spell out the answer he needed. He didn't call. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he dialed Megan. His sister answered on the second ring, her voice bright and teasing. Well, if it isn't Mr. Complicated." Jeff groaned. "Don't start." "Too late," she said, laughing. "So, when are you going to tell her?" Jeff rubbed his forehead. "It's not that simple." "Jeff," Megan said, her tone softening. "You've been in love with her since, what? Forever? And don't even try to deny it. I saw you at Christmas. You looked at her like she hung the moon." Jeff's chest tightened. "What if I ruin everything? What if you don't?" Megan countered. What if she's waiting for you to figure it out? Jeff fell silent, her words echoing in his head. What if she was waiting? What if every laugh, every lingering glance, every time her hand brushed his had been a signal he'd been too blind to see? Megan, he said quietly. I'm scared. I know, she said gently. But you're more scared of losing her, aren't you? Jeff closed his eyes, the truth hitting like a punch. Yeah. Then do something, Megan said, before someone else does. The next day at work, Jeff felt like a man walking a tightrope. Every glance at Shiela was a reminder of what he wanted, and what he might lose. She was at her desk, hair pulled back, tapping at her keyboard like nothing had changed. Like last week hadn't happened. Like the snowstorm hadn't left them tangled in a silence that said everything. He wanted to cross the aisle, to tell her everything, but fear held him back. So he waited, and watched, and wondered if courage was something you could borrow from someone else. By lunch, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his coat and headed for the stairwell, phone in hand. He needed air. He needed clarity. He needed... Jeff! Her voice stopped him cold. He turned, and there she was, standing in the hallway, her scarf looped around her neck, eyes wide like she'd caught him mid-escape. Where are you going? She asked. Just out, he said, his voice rough. Needed a break. She studied him for a long moment, then smiled. A small, careful smile that didn't reach her eyes. You've been quiet. Jeff swallowed hard. I've been thinking. About what? She asked softly. Everything. You. How pretending feels more real than anything I've ever known. But he couldn't say that. Not here. Not yet. About Christmas, he said instead, forcing a smile. It was nice. Her smile faltered. And for a second, Jeff thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or disappointment. He couldn't tell. Then she nodded, her voice light. Yeah, it was. And just like that, the moment slipped away, leaving Jeff standing in the hallway with a truth too big to carry and a fear too heavy to drop. That night, he made a decision. No more waiting. No more hiding behind what-ifs. He was done being afraid of getting wet. If the boat rocked, so be it. Tomorrow, he was going to tell her. Chapter 11. The grand gesture. Jeff had never been more nervous in his life. Not during job interviews. Not during college finals. Not even when his uncle asked him to carve the Thanksgiving turkey in front of 20 people. This was worse. This was everything. He stood in the middle of his apartment, staring at the string of lights he'd spent an hour draping across the walls. A small tree twinkled in the corner, its ornaments mismatched but cheerful. On the coffee table sat 2 mugs of hot cocoa, steam curling like whispers. And beside them, a box of peppermint bark, her favorite. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect. But it was him. And it was for her. Jeff checked his phone for the 10th time. Shiela would be here any minute. He'd texted her earlier, casual as he could manage. Hey, swing by after work? Got something for you. She'd replied with a smiley face and a sure. No questions. No hesitation. Now all he had to do was not choke. The knock came at 6 sharp. Jeff's heart leapt into his throat. He opened the door, and there she was, hair dusted with snow, cheeks pink from the cold, scarf looped around her neck. She smiled, and the world tilted. Wow, she said, stepping inside. This looks amazing. Jeff rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly self-conscious. Just thought we could do our own little Christmas thing. She glanced around, eyes softening as they landed on the cocoa, the lights, the tree. It's perfect. He swallowed hard. Sit. She did, curling up on the couch like she belonged there. Jeff handed her a mug, their fingers brushing, and his pulse spiked. He sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth of her shoulder, and for a moment he just looked at her. Really looked, at the woman who'd been his best friend, his safe place, his constant, and who now felt like the only thing he wanted. Shiela, he said, his voice low. She turned, eyes wide, lips parted like she was bracing for something big. Yeah. Jeff took a breath, the kind that felt like stepping off a cliff. I need to tell you something, and it's not about pretending. Her brows knit, confusion flickering across her face. Okay. He set his mug down, his hands trembling. These past few weeks, Christmas, your family, mine, it wasn't just an act for me. I thought it would be easy, you know? Fake it, get through the holidays, go back to normal. But it didn't feel fake. Not for me. Her breath hitched, and Jeff pressed on before fear could drag him under. I like you, Shiela. More than like you. I've been trying not to for years because I was scared. Scared of losing you, of ruining what we have. But pretending made me realize something. I don't want normal if it means not having you. Silence stretched, thick and fragile. Jeff's heart pounded like a drum. Then Shiela set her mug down, turned fully toward him, and smiled. A smile that was soft and bright and everything he'd been afraid to hope for. Jeff, she whispered, her voice trembling. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting for you to say that? His breath caught. You what? She laughed, a sound that cracked the tension like sunlight breaking through clouds. I've been in love with you for years, you idiot. Jeff stared, stunned, then laughed. A shaky, disbelieving laugh that turned into a grin. You could have said something. I tried, she teased, eyes shining. You're just really bad at signals, he groaned. But before he could reply, she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It wasn't careful. It was warm and real and everything he'd been holding back. Jeff kissed her back like he'd been waiting his whole life, his hands cradling her face, his heart soaring. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, Shiela rested her forehead against his. So, no more pretending? Never again, Jeff said, his voice rough with emotion. You're stuck with me. She smiled, her fingers lacing through his. Best Christmas ever. And for the first time in years, Jeff agreed. Chapter 12. The Confession and Resolution. Jeff woke up the next morning with a grin he couldn't shake. It wasn't just the memory of Sheila's kiss, though that alone was enough to make his heart race. It was the certainty that everything had changed. For the better. No more pretending. No more hiding behind fear. He had her. Really had her. And now came the part that terrified him almost as much as confessing had. Telling everyone else. At the office, Shiela was already at her desk when Jeff walked in, her hair catching the soft glow of the Christmas lights strung across the cubicle walls. She looked up, and the smile that spread across her face was enough to make Jeff forget how to breathe. Morning, she said, her voice warm, intimate in a way that made the hum of the office fade. Morning, he replied, dropping his bag and leaning against her desk like it was the most natural thing in the world. So, last night, her cheeks flushed, and she laughed softly. Best night ever. Jeff grinned. Agreed. They shared a look that said everything words couldn't, and for a moment Jeff forgot they were in a room full of people. Then Shiela cleared her throat, her voice dropping to a whisper. We should probably figure out how to, tell people. Jeff groaned. Right? The families. And Megan, Shiela added, smirking. She's going to say, I told you so at least 20 times. She already did, Jeff muttered, earning a laugh that made his chest ache in the best way. That evening they started with Megan. Jeff called her while Shiela sat beside him on the couch, their fingers intertwined. So, Megan said after he spilled the news, her voice smug enough to fill the room. Finally grew a spine, huh? Jeff rolled his eyes. Thanks for the support. Don't thank me, Megan said. Thank Shiela for putting up with you. Shiela laughed, leaning closer to the phone. Hi, Megan. Hi, future sister-in-law. Megan shot back, and Jeff groaned so loudly Shiela nearly fell off the couch laughing. The family announcements were a whirlwind. His mom cried happy tears. Her dad clapped Jeff on the back so hard he nearly saw stars, and the cousins immediately started planning a double date that Jeff had no intention of attending. Through it all, Shiela stayed close, her hand in his, her smile steady, like she'd been waiting for this moment as long as he had. And maybe she had. Later that night, when the calls were done and the apartment was quiet, Jeff pulled Shiela into his arms, her head resting against his chest. You know, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. I spent years afraid of rocking the boat. She tilted her head, her eyes soft. And now, he smiled, his heart full. Now I'm glad I got wet. She laughed, the sound warm and bright, and kissed him like she never planned to stop. For the first time in his life, Jeff felt like Christmas wasn't about gifts or lights or even family traditions. It was about finding the courage to love, and the joy of knowing that love was returned. And as he held Shiela close, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Chapter 13. Epilogue. 1 year later. Snow fell in lazy spirals outside the window, frosting the city in white. Inside Jeff's apartment, now their apartment, the scent of cinnamon and pine mingled with laughter. The tree in the corner was taller this year, its ornaments carefully chosen instead of the mismatched chaos of last Christmas. A garland draped across the mantel, stockings hung side by side. Jeff and Shiela, stitched in red. Jeff stood in the kitchen, wearing an apron that read "Kiss the Cook," a gag gift from Megan, who was currently perched on the couch with a mug of cocoa, grinning like she owned the place. You're really leaning into this domestic thing, she teased. Jeff shot her a look over his shoulder. You're just jealous of my culinary skills. You burned the rolls, Megan said sweetly. They were lightly toasted, Jeff muttered, earning a laugh from Shiela, who breezed in carrying a tray of peppermint bark. She set it down, kissed Jeff on the cheek, and whispered, You're lucky you're cute. Jeff grinned, sliding an arm around her waist. Best Christmas ever? Again, she said, her eyes sparkling. The doorbell rang, and chaos descended. His parents, her parents, cousins, siblings, all tumbling in with gifts and laughter, and enough holiday cheer to power the city grid. The apartment filled with warmth and noise, and Jeff couldn't stop smiling. Last year, he'd walked into Christmas terrified of questions about settling down. This year, he had answers, and they were better than anything he'd imagined. At some point, his uncle cornered him by the tree, grinning like a man who'd won a bet. So, Jeff, he said, nudging him. Any baby names yet? Jeff groaned. But before he could reply, Shiela appeared, sliding her hand into his and flashing a mischievous smile. We're taking suggestions, she said, and Jeff nearly choked on his cider. The room erupted in laughter, and Jeff laughed too, because this time it wasn't awkward. It was perfect. It was theirs. Later, when the guests had gone and the apartment was quiet again, Jeff and Sheila curled up on the couch, the glow of the tree painting their faces in gold. Outside, snow whispered against the glass. Inside, Jeff kissed her softly, his heart full. "Remember last year?" he murmured. "When I asked you to pretend?" Sheila smiled, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his arm. "Best fake relationship ever." Jeff chuckled, pulling her closer. "Best real one too." She laughed, warm and bright, and kissed him like she never planned to stop. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, Jeff realized something. He wasn't afraid of rocking the boat anymore, because with Sheila beside him, even getting wet felt like home.